So today we'll be looking at data connections. Okay, so we'll looking at some data connections in Tableau, how we can connect to the data and then do some scheduling um, of the data connections. Okay, so scheduling is automatic emailing of the uh, reports to the subscribed users. Okay, so we'll see data sources, scheduling, and data connections today. So coming to data sources in Tableau server, there are two types of data sources which are available. Okay, so one is embedded data source and the other one is published data source. Published data source and embedded data source. So in case of embedded data source, uh, when we publish a workbook, Tableau automatically embeds the data source in that workbook. We have been publishing the data workbooks onto Tableau server. So after the publishing has happened, so for example, uh, in default, so this is the workbook that we have published onto server. So once the dashboard is published, um, along with the dashboard, uh, data sources are embedded along with them. So these two are the data sources which are being used in this dashboard. So they are embedded along with the published dashboard. Okay, so this is a this is a embedded data source. So when we publish a workbook, Tableau automatically embeds the data source in that workbook. So this data source is specific to that particular workbook only. So these data sources are 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 related to this particular workbook only, summary and KPI dashboard workbook only. Okay, so it cannot be shared or used across multiple workbooks. So it is only for this summary and KPI dashboard. So data sources like coffee chain query and orders data sources are of summary and KPI dashboard only. So there is a dependency between these data sources and this dashboard. Uh, this particular data source is specific to that particular workbook only. It cannot be shared and used across multiple workbooks. So we can say that it is dependent on the workbook. So the data source, the embedded data source is dependent on the workbook. So if you publish n workbooks, Tableau will create n number of embedded data sources. Okay, so if we for each workbook there will be an embedded data source. So if you publish n workbooks onto server, so Tableau will create n embedded data sources. So this is about embedded data source. So in case of published data sources, published data source behave independently. That means it is not dependent on any dashboard. It means on the published data source, we can build n number of workbooks directly in the Tableau server. So if you publish a data source onto server, we can use that uh, as a data source, independent data source, and we can connect to the data source and build our own workbooks. Okay, so we can build any number of workbooks by directly connecting to the server. So we'll perform a task now to publish, okay, a data source onto Tableau server. So publishing a published data source in Tableau server is our task now. So we'll connect to the required data source from Tableau desktop. So we'll open the Tableau desktop and we'll connect to the required data source. Okay, so the required data source is, so the training superstore. We'll take the orders table and connect to the data source like this. So now, so I'll right click on the data source and click on publish to server. So we'll select the required project name, and so So we'll select the required project name and, click on publish. Tableau is publishing the data source onto server. So this is a big data source. This is taking some time. So yeah, it is successfully published to the Tableau server. Now log into the server and then click on the required site. So it is default that we have published that into, and then click on content. So select the data source. So Auto training supposed to is the published data source. Select the data source, click on actions and click on new workbook. So we have published a data source onto Tableau server, and we have connected that data source to a new workbook, and we can build our own workbook here on Tableau server. Okay, and we can save them as well. We'll name it as a test one and save it. So from Tableau Server 9, it is possible to create calculated fields directly at the server level itself. So you can create a calculated fields also at the server level and then perform the analysis that we require. Okay, so we can directly delete the published data source as it is being independent. Okay, so once a data source is published onto server, so we can delete the data source. We can delete the data source as it is a published data source, and it is also independent. So it is not dependent on any workbook. However, it is not possible to delete embedded data sources as they are dependent on workbooks. For example, these are uh, these are dependent data sources. So we cannot delete these data sources. So these are all embedded data sources. So embedded data sources are dependent data sources. That is, they are dependent on the workbook they are related to. So we cannot delete them. However, we can delete published data sources because they are independent. So if we delete a workbook, then automatically embedded data sources will be deleted. So if you delete a workbook here, if you select this workbook and delete this workbook, automatically the embedded data sources that are there along with this dashboard will get deleted automatically. Okay, so if we publish the extract data source, Tableau server saves the extract files, whereas with the live connections for databases, Tableau server just saves the live connection information. So if we publish the extract data sources, so while publishing, what I've done is, so I've right clicked in, clicked on the extract data. That means, so I have extracted the data and then published that onto Tableau server. So saving an extract file will publishing an extract data source will what if that is done. So Tableau server saves the extract files. So Tableau server will save the extract file. Whereas if you use the live connection, so if you are not using a extract connection, however, you are using a live connection. Okay, so if you are using a live connection, so then what it does is um, Tableau saves just the live connection information. So whatever information, live connection information is there to the data source, it just stores the live connection details only. Okay, so this is about published and uh, embedded data sources. We have to note here that if you published file data sources, so there are two types of data sources, right? Files and databases. File data sources and databases. Okay, so whenever we connect to Tableau, so there are different file systems and databases. Okay, if we publish file data sources like Excel, text file, or Access or PDF, so with the live connection, so if we use live connection, Tableau server saves the file data into the server. So Tableau server saves the file data into Tableau server. So we also have to note here that it is possible to perform development directly at the Tableau server level itself. So we have seen how we can do that. So this is a Tableau dashboard developed directly on server, not on Tableau desktop. Okay, so we can, it is possible to perform development directly at the Tableau server level with the help of published data sources. So we have connected to a published data sources. So first we have published the data source called orders training superstore. So this data source has been published onto server. Then on server we have built this database, build this report. So we can do the development directly at the Tableau server level itself with the help of the published data source. So with the embedded data source, it is not possible to perform development because it is a dependent data source. Okay, so it is always recommended to perform development at the desktop level only, not on the server level. So we have to perform development only on the desktop level, not on the server level, because doing development at server level will give very bad performance. So because there will be many processes running in the background, so there will be some lags in between, so the performance will be very poor. So it is always recommended to do all the development activities in desktop and then publish that to server. However, we can do development on Tableau server level. So also note here that published data sources will be indicated with different icons. We'll see how they will be indicated. So this is a published data source. So published data source will be indicated by this icon. Okay, just a cylinder icon. So this is a published data source. This is a visual cue for identifying a published data source. So we'll see what is a embedded data source, how will it look like. So yeah, so this is the icon. Okay, so a cylinder and on top of that a text. So this is the icon uh, which which will indicate a embedded data source. So this is a visual cue for identifying a embedded data source. Okay, and just a simple cylinder for published data source. This icon is for embedded data source because it is depending on a report. Okay, so yeah, these are the visual cues. So now we will go to the next topic, scheduling. So what is scheduling? So scheduling is automation of manual tasks. Okay, so that can be achieved with the help of scheduling. So basically, rather than sending mails manually to different stakeholders, we can achieve the automation of the manual tasks with the help of scheduling. Okay, scheduling can be performed for two types of tasks. Okay, so scheduling can be performed for two types of tasks. One is extract refreshes and other one is subscriptions. So we can do extract refreshes and the other one is subscriptions. So extract refreshes will perform extract refresh is performing refreshing at the extract files automatically. So extract refresh will perform refreshing of the extract files automatically. So that means if you use extract refresh, so it will perform refreshing of the extract files automatically. So if you use subscriptions, subscriptions will send the required visualizations to subscribers automatically using SMTP. So there are uh, two types of tasks in extract refreshing. Okay, so one is uh, extract refreshes. Okay, creating a schedule. Okay, so it will be performing the refreshing of the extract files automatically. The other one is subscriptions. So subscriptions will send the required visualizations to the subscribers automatically using SMTP. So we'll create a task to create a schedule. Okay, so remember that only uh, server admins can create new schedules. Okay, whereas a site admin can use the existing schedules. Okay, so we have to log in as a server admin uh, user and then click on schedules here, click on schedules and then and click on a new schedule, on a new schedule. The new schedule window, enter the schedule name. Name the schedule. Okay, and then um, select the task type. So as I've told you, there in scheduling there are two types of tasks: extract refreshes and subscription. Okay, so we'll select the type as extract refresh and give the priority as 1, default priority as 1. So execution as parallel. Okay, and frequency as daily, say 4 a.m. and click on create. So schedule, created schedule morning refresh. So it will be under the list morning refresh. Okay, so we have created a extract refresh in schedules window, schedules tab. So we have to note here that it is not possible to schedule a live connection. So we are scheduling a extract connection. So we are scheduling a extract connection only. Okay, so it is not possible to schedule a live connection. What is the reason? Can you say the reason?
Kranti, can you please come again?
So it is not possible to schedule a live connection.
Because the day or whatever the data are maybe might have changed.
See, because the live connection has a live communication path between the Tableau server and the Tableau data source. So every time it will connect and fetch the data from the data source while rendering the report. So anyways, that is a refreshed and fresh data. Fresh data will be shown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there is no need for a refresh. No need for a extract refresh. Okay. So the live connection will have a live connection communication path. So it will whatever the fresh data is available. So it will extract that fresh data directly from the source. Okay. So you don't have to create any extract refresh for that. Okay. So that is the reason. So So whenever the report rendering is done, so it will fetch the data from the data source, fresh data from the data source. So report rendering time is the time taken by the Tableau server to display the report. Okay, so it will actually take the fresh data, so we don't need any extract refresh. So that is one point. So other point is it is possible to create two schedules with the same priority also. So so the priority that we have given is 1. So we can also create one more schedule like this. Okay, new schedule with the same priority 1, with the same priority as 1. So that means it will have the highest priority whenever multiple schedules are being run. So these two will have the highest priorities, which will have the priority as 1. Okay, if we have 10 schedules at a time, the schedule which is having the least number, say 1, will have the highest priority while running. Okay, so also remember that the minimum time interval between two schedules is 15 minutes. Okay, so earlier we have scheduled it to 4 a.m. So the second schedule should have the time as 4:15. Okay, so the minimum time interval between two schedules is 15 minutes. So we have to make sure that the 15 minutes gap is there between any schedule. Okay, now we will perform another task to add schedules to the extract file. So you have to note here that to the extract files, the schedules can be added at the time of publishing from the desktop and even at the Tableau server level. Okay, we'll see that in detail. So first add a data source, and then we'll first extract it. So I'll right click and click on extract data. Okay, right. So we've told that to the extract files, the schedules can be added at the time of publishing the desktop. So by creating an extract, what happens is Tableau will create a .hyper file. Okay, so it was called as .tde file in earlier versions. In the latest versions, it is called as .hyper file. So save that. So it will get stored in my Tableau repository data sources. Then, so while publishing that from the desktop also, so right click on the data source and then click on publish to server. So while publishing, okay, so you'll be asked to publish from. Okay, so you can also add the schedule to the extract file while publishing to the server. So while publishing to the server, so what is the uh, schedule that we have created? What is the extract refresh that we have created? Monday morning. Morning refresh every day at 4 a.m. Okay, so we can add the extract schedules to the extract files while publishing the report at the desktop level. So this is at the desktop level. When you click publish, so you can add the schedule like this. This is the desktop level. You can also do that at the Tableau server level also. So we'll see that in detail. Okay. So first we have to publish the required data source in the form of a .tde file. So what we have done, so um, first we have extracted. So while extracting the data, it has taken as a .hyper file. So that is saved. Okay, so we will be publishing that data source to Tableau server. So we'll right click on the data source and then click on publish to server. So while so like this we have published. So click on publish and we can publish that auto server. Okay, so we'll not check anything. So we'll publish that onto server. So it is successfully published to the server. Right. So go to the server, click on the content, and click on the data sources. Okay, so injuries plus work. Okay, 6:33 a.m. it has been published. Okay, so it is published just now.
Kranti, here I have one question. So, how do we know it is following with time zone? Because it's all based on the server time zone.
Um, yes, of course. So here this is on my local system, so it is following my system time zone. However,
Okay.
so when this is on Tableau server, so we have to select which data center it is located on. So we can select either US East zone or East time zone or Central or Pacific. So you can select the time zone. So at the time, so it follows the specific time zone. So you can see that the time zone will be represented here. Okay, so while creating the Tableau server itself, we can select the data center time zone. Okay, that way we can see that.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So right. So we have to click on the content and click on the data sources and select the required source. So here injury space work injury data. So this is the data source that we have published. And select the required source and click on actions and click on the extract refresh extracts. So in the refresh extracts window, click on the schedule a refresh and then select the schedule, so which is morning refresh that we have created, and then click on schedule refreshes. So one extract refresh has been created. So this is uh, adding the schedule refresh on Tableau server. So the schedule task will automatically get added to task tab to server. Once you have done this, so go to tasks. So this will get added to the task list like this. Okay, so it's a full refresh, morning refresh, daily at 4 a.m. Okay, so priority one. So we know that. So it last updated is uh, this time, so next update will be tomorrow. So uh, this is the task list. So that means once we have added a schedule refresh to extract, so automatically the schedule task will be added to tasks tab of Tableau server. To run the schedule right now, select the schedule task and click on actions and click on run now. Okay, click on run now. Right, so this has been added to the queue. Right, so to check the status of the um, schedule, so click on status, click on background tasks for extracts, and check the status. So it will show you the status now. So it is a injuries 5 workbook and it is success. Okay, so you can see the time also, 6:38. So at 6:38 it ran. 6:38 27 seconds is the time on which it has run. Okay, right, so you can see the status also like this. Right, right, so to check the status, we have to go to status, and go to background task for extracts. Here we can check the, click on background state for task for extracts and then check the status. Okay, so if it is in process, it will show as in process. If it is success, it will show success. If it is a failure, it will show failure and then give you some errors. Okay, so now it is success now. Okay, that means, so the scheduled task is just run because we have selected run now. Okay, so we have to note here that it is not possible to run two schedules within less than 15 minutes at Tableau server level. So we have discussed that. So the minimum time interval between two schedules is 15 minutes. So it is not possible to run two schedules within less than 15 minutes at Tableau server level. So if you want to run within less than 15 minutes, then we have to do that at the ETL level, and it is not possible at the Tableau level, server level. Okay. So we'll move on to the next task. So of adding a schedule at the time of publishing. So we'll create a required extract file. So remember, once the published data source has been published onto server, so the icon changes like this. So earlier it used to be a cylinder. So now the icon has changed to a Tableau file format. So that means this is a published data source, published Tableau data source. That means this data source is sitting on Tableau server now. Okay, so you can also connect to this particular server data source which is sitting on Tableau server and make this as a, make use of this as a data source as well in your subsequent workbooks also. For example, while this is acting as a data Tableau data source now. So select Tableau server, and then select this Tableau server. So you will be able to connect to this Tableau server like this by clicking on the data source like this. Okay. So basically we can make use of this Tableau data sources like this. Right. So this is the new connection that we have built now. So we have just made a new connection. So we've connected to a Tableau server data source. Similarly, so here we are adding a scheduler at the time of, so now task is to add a schedule at the time of publishing. So uh, we'll first create a required extract file. That means first we have to create connect to a data source. We'll connect to a simple data source, or we'll change this to the trip path mapping. So we'll make this model, and and then so this is the live data connection. So we'll create the required extract file. So we'll extract this data, and this will create a dot hyper file. So now the extract has been created. So right click on this extract file and click on publish to server. So in the publish window, select the required schedule. So select the project also, and then select the required schedule also, which is morning refresh, which you have created. You can create any number of schedules and then select from the drop down based on your requirement. And then click on publish now. So this is publishing from their desktop. Now this is done. So go to log into server, check whether the schedules got added to the extract or not. Okay, so this got added now at 6:42. Okay, so yeah, so it is successfully added to the extracts. Okay, extract refresh using Tableau desktop. So using um, using server, we have added injuries work data. So using desktop, we have added mapping data. Okay, so this is how we can schedule the extract both at the time of publishing and on Tableau server, right? So we have to note here that extract file refreshing can be performed in two ways: full refresh and incremental refresh. Okay, so whenever we are publishing any data onto server, data source onto server, so there are two types of refreshes that we can perform. One is full refresh, which is a default refresh. Another one is a incremental refresh. So full refresh, which is a default refresh, will remove the existing data from the uh, dot hyper file, and it will add the complete data from the data source into dot hyper. It means it performs the insertion, updation, and deletion whenever we perform the refresh. So full refresh will what it will do? What will a full refresh do? Full refresh, whenever it refreshes, it completely replaces the data. Okay, so it performs the operations like insertion, updation, and deletion. So if there are any updations in the data, if there are any deletions of rows, if there are any insertions of new rows, so it will do a full refresh of the data. So all these tasks will be done when we choose full refresh. So there is also incremental refresh. So if you choose incremental refresh, it will add only new data from the data source into the dot hyper file. Okay, so now new data means newly inserted records or newly inserted rows. So incremental refresh will not update existing data. It will only include the new rows which are added to the data for the next refresh. So incremental refresh is based on incremental key. So there should be a incremental key whenever you refresh the data. So based on that incremental key, it identifies the new records. So mostly we will take a date plus time fields or date fields only as the incremental keys. Okay, so because uh, we have to have a incremental key for identifying the in increase in or addition of new rows. So we'll mostly take date plus time fields or date fields. So we'll perform a task to set incremental behavior for an extract file. So note that to identify new rows in incremental refresh, we need a primary key column or date column or uh, okay, date column. So date column is recommended, okay, in any incremental refresh. So we'll right click on the extract file first. So we'll see how we can do that. So in this task to set incremental behavior for an extract file. Okay, so we'll first connect to a data source. So we'll click on extract data. So in the extract data window, we have to select on the number of rows, we have to select incremental refresh. Okay, and click on, okay, and also we have to select the um, column. We have to select the column. So we have to select those data sources only which have a date field while performing incremental refresh. So we'll change that to a data source which is having a date column. Say trending superstore sales. This has a date column. Right click and extract data and select incremental refresh. So select a date column, order date. Okay, this is the incremental key. Okay, and click on extract. Save it. So we have to note here that refreshing extract schedules can be defined for full refresh as well as for incremental refresh. So that is upon your own requirement. So you can either choose incremental refresh or full refresh. Also note that incremental and full refresh can be defined on the same schedules also. Okay, so we can define both full and incremental refresh also. So we'll perform a task to add a schedule for incremental refresh. Okay, for the extract file will define an incremental refresh like this. So this is the incremental refresh for this extract file, uh, and we will publish this to server. Now see this. Select the required schedule for incremental. So we have two options here. One is incremental and other one is full extract. So we have two options here. So under incremental, select the required refresh schedule. So this is morning refresh under refresh schedule. So we can add both incremental and full extract also for a single schedule. Okay, so right, so we'll select the incremental refresh here and then click on publish. Okay, this has been successfully published to the Tableau server. Now log into server and check the required source. Okay, so the incremental refresh has been added at 6:50 now, 6:50 a.m. So this is the incremental refresh. Okay, so this has been successfully added. So we can select the login to server, check the required sources, click on action, select refresh. Go to content. So we first have to identify the data source which has been published. So it has been published at 6:50 now. Go to the content default and then select the data sources. So so select the particular select the uh, particular required data source. Click on actions and then select the extract refresh. So refresh extracts. Okay, select either full or incremental refresh. So you can select the full refresh or incremental refresh now. So we have option to do both full or incremental, right? So note that incremental refresh will be available at the server level once we define the incremental behavior for the extract file at the desktop level. Okay, either using primary key or date column. So we'll have this option of incremental refresh only if we define the incremental behavior while extracting the file at the desktop level. Okay, so also note that when we are adding any schedules, okay, so in the settings tab, so we can select the incremental refresh, so it will get added like this. So when we are adding any schedules in the settings tab of the server, we need to check embedded credentials. We have to check the embedded credentials. We have to check the embedded credentials because some data sources require authentication information. For example, connecting to the database, um, and we have to check allow publisher to schedule data extract refreshes. Okay, so we have to check whether this authentication information has been given or not. Right. So in the next task, we'll add a schedule to the workbook. We'll create a new workbook with the extract connection and create a new sheet. We'll create a new workbook. We'll get a new workbook with the extract connection. So we'll extract this connection. And create a new sheet. So we'll sign into the server. So it is already been signed in. So and we'll publish this content. Uh, Publish. So we'll make a report, simple bar graph. They will publish this workbook. In the publish window in the bottom, click on okay scheduling.
Looks like it's stuck.
Oh, sorry. So I'll get back. I have to do that again. So I'll have to uh, select the schedule and click on publish. So we have to log into the required site. Refresh this to log into the required site and click on tasks. So go to tasks and check whether the scheduled task is added or not. So where did we add this?
Yeah, I'm not able to see whatever you're doing, Kranti.
You're not able to see.
Yeah, it is. I can see only overlapping windows. System got hanged.
Can you check the
Maybe
can you check your internet connection? So can you can you
okay. Let me do one thing. I'll just disconnect and connect again. Okay.
yeah, yeah, no issues.
Yeah. Now I'm able to see.
Okay. So select the required schedule and then publish to the uh, server. Okay. So here, what we have checked while publishing, you have to see. So it is publishing to default site. Okay. So publish the workbook. While publishing, select the refresh schedule and then publish it. It is publishing under default. So log into required site, go to default content and click on tasks and check whether the scheduled task is added or not. We'll change the site now. We'll publish it to dev. So the site is dev and we'll publish this to dev site. So the project is default and it is full extract and publish. Okay, now we have to check that after going into the particular site under task, we have to check that if the scheduled task is added or not. Now scheduled task is added like this. Okay, so it has been added just now. Right. like this. So it is possible to add a schedule for the workbook at the server level also. To do that, okay, so to do that, select the required workbook having extract connection. So uh, say this is the workbook. The first thing is that it should have an extract connection, and then click on actions. So it should have an extract connection. So we'll select only those workbooks which should have an extract connection. So, we'll select the workbook, go to actions, and now, so for extract connections, um, we'll select the extract refresh. So refresh extracts is the one. So we can select the full refresh. Also, we can select this particular morning refresh, which is a track schedule, and click on schedule. Okay, so we can add the refresh extract like this also from Tableau server. Okay, so in extract refresh window, we have to select the um, required refresh and schedule it. Okay, so we have to note that if the workbook contains the extract files, then only it is possible to add schedules for the workbook. So we have to select only those workbooks which are having extract files, right? Also, um, just a second. So we'll try to connect to a data source. Just a second, guys. Right. We'll select Oracle now while connecting to the data. So we'll enter the server name. Just a second. So my intention here is to connect to a database. Um, we'll try to connect to another database. So just a second, I'll try to get the details. So we'll take a couple of minutes break, guys, and then we'll come back later. So and then we'll try to connect to a database and see how we can connect by prompting user and then by embedding password also. We'll take a couple of minutes break. So I'll fetch the
Okay, Kranti.
credentials, details, and then we'll come back. So here we we now want to publish our database into Tableau server. So till now we have been publishing file system. So we want to publish a database. So from desktop we have to connect to the database. So for that, so I'm using a Microsoft SQL server. So I'm selecting the database. And then so open a new sheet and we'll right click on the database connection and then click on publish to server. So here uh, we have to log into the server. So and then click on the okay. So before that, in publish window, so we have to select the authentication as prompt user. So there will be an authentication option here. So we have to select prompt user. We have to select prompt user here. So and click on publish. So this is a little different with a database. So we'll have to do the authentication as a prompt user. So you have to log into the server. Click on to the click on the content tab. and then select the required data source. Okay, this is the latest one added. Okay, so we have to uh, click on the latest. So we have to now check the um, we have to log into the server and then click on the content tab and select the required data source. And under actions, you have to click on new workbook. So before opening the data source, it will prompt the user to enter the authentication. So for establishing a security, so we have to do this. So whenever we are connecting to a database, so rather than directly connecting to it, so we have to prompt the user to enter the credentials. So it will prompt the user to enter the authentication. So we have to enter the details. So once you enter the credentials, then and only you will be able to enter into the workbook. So this is one of the security features that you can add. So whenever you are connecting to a databases, whenever we are connecting to a database, you can add by selecting the authentication as a prompt user. So you have to enter the required username and password and connect it to the database, be it a Oracle database system or a MySQL or SQL server database. So yeah, you have to note here that if you are publishing a database, two types of authentication are available. One is prompt user, which will ask the authentication every time. The other one is an embedded password, so which will embed the password into the connection details. So this embed password is mainly used for the extract files, .hyper files. Okay, so it won't ask for any authentication. For live connections, we have to use prompt users. Okay, so this is about the different data connections in Tableau. Okay, so you can make use of these data connections, and you can develop the dashboards making Tableau as a data source. Okay, so basically we can make use of these connections, and we can make the Tableau source as a data source here. Okay, right. So we will look at the permissions now. So we can assign permissions on Tableau server also. Okay. So we'll look at permissions now. So with the help of permissions, we can control the user access on the content of the Tableau server. Okay, so if you have to constrain access to different users, you can define permissions. So with the help of permissions, we can control the user access on the content of the Tableau server. So the permissions can be defined at the server level, and even at the time of publishing the desktop publishing the workbook from desktop. Okay, so permissions can be defined by server admins, site admins, somebody who is having a permission role to publish it. Okay, or a project leader permission role, or who can author the content. It means the web users um, uh, who are publishing the content onto server, or editor permission role also. So how somebody who can edit permissions also, or users having set permission capability. So all these users um, can define the permissions. So there are different levels of permissions also which can be set in Tableau. Permissions can be defined at project level, workbook level. So permissions can be set at the project level, also at the workbook level. Also at the workbook level. So permissions can also be set at the workbook level, each workbook level, or data view level also, or permissions can be set at the data view level also, data view level also. So this is the data view level, or they can also be set at the data source level. Permissions can also be set at the data source level. Okay, so there are four levels at which we can set the permissions: one at project, one at workbook, and the other one is at view, and the other is data source level. So at four levels we can set the permissions. Okay, so you have to note here that permissions can be added on a single user or group of users at a time. So we can add permissions for a single user or a group of users at a time. Okay, so also note that to assign permissions, we need to specify the permissions roles for that user or a group. Okay, so first we have to assign permissions, specify the permissions roles for that user, for that single user or for that group. Okay, the total outcome of the permissions depends on the site role of the user. So um, we, are, we were discussing about the site roles of the users. Okay, so depending upon the site role of the user, the outcome of the permission also depends. For example, viewer site role, for viewer site role we cannot assign the interactive permission role. Okay, so depending upon the site role only we can assign the permissions. So for viewers, so for example, in users, somebody is a read only, that means he is just a viewer. User 2 is a read only site role, so having a read only site role. So for user 2 we cannot assign a interactive permission role, so we cannot assign a interactive permission role. So so the total outcome of permission depends upon the site role of the user. So to assign permissions specifically at the data view level, okay, so we need to publish the workbook without show sheets at tabs. Okay, so to assign the permissions um, at the data view level, if if we want to define the permissions, assign the permissions at the specifically at the data view level, specifically at the data view level, this level. So while publishing the dashboard, so while publishing the dashboard, so say this is the view. Say this is the view. So while publishing the dashboard, we need to publish without show sheets as tabs. So we should not select, we should uncheck the show sheets as tabs. If you want to assign permissions, if you want to assign permissions at specifically at a view level. Okay, so if you want to assign permissions specifically at view level, so we have to uncheck show sheets as tab while publishing the workbook onto Tableau server. Okay, so this is because, so if you show sheets as tab and publish it, so they will be shown like this. So for example, they'll be shown like this as tabs. So they'll be shown as tabs like this. So if, okay, so if there are three tabs, they will be shown as three tabs like this. However, so if you want to specify a condition on a view level, so that means we want to show only few views to few users, not all views to all users. So in those cases, what will happen is, if we publish to show as tabs, so all the views will be shown. So we don't want all the views should be shown. So that's why we uncheck that and then publish and specify the permissions. Okay. So in each site, okay, under each site. So for example, this is a default site. So in each site there are groups and users. There are groups and users. So we can assign permissions on either users or either groups. Okay. So any user, after assigning some permissions, we can restrict the access by assigning permissions for users. For example, if you are assigning permissions on users, so we can restrict permissions to access projects. For any user, you can restrict access to projects, workbooks, views, and data sources by defining permissions on users. Similarly, for groups also, uh, if you are defining some groups, for example, this group is of a QA team. So we don't want to show um, projects which are in development stage. So we will restrict those access. And also we don't want to give access to QA team for all the data sources. So we will restrict that using permissions. So we also don't want to show all the workbooks, but only specific workbooks which are ready for QA, which are ready for QA. So in those cases, so we will use permissions. So we'll see permissions at a project level, at project level. So only server or site admins can define permissions at a project level. Okay, so we'll see how to define permissions at the project level. So first we have to log in as an admin user and click on content. Okay, and select the required project. And select the required project. And click on permissions. And click on permissions. In the permissions window, select add user. Select add a user or a group rule. Okay. So here select the user or a group name and select the required permission role. For example, if you are assigning for a group, you have to select the group, or if you are assigning the permission for a user, so select the user only. So for example, so what is the role of a user one? So first we have to see that. So user one is a site admin, user two is a viewer only. Okay, so we'll see assign either for user one and user two. Okay, so we'll see that. So we'll go to content, go to the project, and under permissions, so we'll click on add user or group rule. So we'll select the user here. So we'll select user one. And we will select the required permission role. We'll select the required permission role and click on save. So the permission role that we want here is for user one, all the default projects should be shown. So it is by default none here. So we'll keep it as a project leader. So for project, they can, the user one can access the project under the role of a project leader. Okay, and workbook also uh, as a editor. So user one, because he's a site admin, he can edit, he can view, he can interact with the workbooks. So even for data sources, he can edit the data sources. He can connect to the data source. User one side being a site admin, will save the options. Similarly, we can assign a group rule. So we'll select the group. imagine this is a QA group. Okay, so you want a restricted access for QA team. So for all the projects under default, okay, so you only want them to view the projects, and even workbooks, you just um, want them to interact because they are a QA team. So you have you have to give as an interactor role. So you just have to give them to connect to a data source, not edit any data source. Okay, so for a QA team, we are giving just a view, interact, and connecting permissions, and click on save. Okay, so like this, we can assign permissions at the project level. Okay, we can assign permissions at the project level and click on save. So this will be added like this. So user 1 and user 2 and user 3, and also so for groups also you can create the permissions like this, right? So in the resultant permission, Tableau will display the permission assigned. Okay, so this will display the permission assignment. So we have to log in as the required user and check the permissions. Okay, so we have to log out as a, so this is a server administrator. Okay, my server administrator, you have to log in as a user 1 now. Okay, so user 1 can access the workbooks. User 1 can access the data sources, so they can only view it. Okay, they can only view it. Similarly, yeah, the user 1 can also edit it because we have given edit permissions to edit permissions to user 1 as user 1 being a site admin. So we will log out as a user 1 and login as a um, login as a admin again. So what are the different permissions that we can assign um, at the project level? So we'll see that. So what are the different levels? So the different permission roles at the project level are viewer. So with this role, the user can only view the content. Okay. So the second role is here you can also see interactor. So with interactor permission role, users can interact with the content. Okay, interact with the content. Okay, so we also have publisher here. So publisher can interact and also save changes on server. So if you give the permission of a publisher, so publisher can interact with the workbook and also save changes on the server. So you can publish the workbook onto the server also. So in data source connector, so we have data source connector also. So with this role, the users will be able to connect to the data source but cannot perform any changes. It is just a ability to connect to the data source, and they cannot perform any changes. So data source editor is also there here. So with this role, the user will be able to connect to the data source and they can modify the data source also. They can modify the data source also. Okay, so there is also project leader here. It's a project leader for project. So with this role, the user will act as an admin for one project, where he can control the complete operations of that particular project. So if you assign a project leader role, so they will act as an admin for that project, and they can control the complete operations in that particular project. So that will be the on top of the hierarchy line. Okay, so you have to assign managers or team leaders as project leaders for a particular role, or any SME should be given this project role depending upon the requirement. Right. We also have none or denied. None or denied. So none means we have not assigned any capability. Okay, denied means we have restricted the user for not accessing that particular capability. So if you give denied, so the the particular user will not be able to access that capability. If you give none, that means we have not assigned any capability. Okay, so that is the meaning of these permission levels. Okay, so we also have editor under workbooks. Okay, so under workbooks, editor role can be able to perform all the operations on the content in Tableau server. So if you give editor role uh, under workbooks, so uh, those people can perform all the operations on the content in Tableau server. Okay, so there is also custom here. So there's also custom here. So along with default capabilities, if we add new, or if we remove existing, then automatically the role gets changed to custom. So for example, along with the different options available, um, okay, so along with the default capabilities, if we add new or remove any existing capabilities, then automatically the role gets changed to the custom role. Okay, so this is the custom role uh, permissions. So similarly, we can assign permissions at the workbook level also. We can assign permissions at the workbook level also. So at workbook level, the different permission roles available are, again, viewer, interactor, editor, none, denied, and custom. So similarly, as we have defined the permissions at the project level, we can define at the workbook level also. So different roles can be defined. Okay, and on a workbook level, we can define different roles. Right. So at a data view level also, we can define. The data view level also, we have to first select the data view level and then select the different permissions. Similarly, at the data source level also, we can define permissions. We can define the permissions as we have done earlier. Okay, this is about the uh, permissions. Okay, permissions at different levels, uh, where you can assign permissions and then restrict access to different data sources and files. Okay, so even workbooks and projects also. Okay, this is about Tableau server and how we can maintain workbooks on Tableau server. So any questions till now?
No, Kranti.
Yeah. So this actually concludes the Tableau training session. So if you have any feedback or questions, do get back to me. I will share you online feedback form. So please feel free to give some feedback so that, I mean, earlier
Yeah,
in the
sure, sure, Kranti.
sessions.
I'll update that. I'll definitely fill that feedback form.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raghav. Thanks for your
Thank
time.
you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take care. Bye bye.